Welcome to the last part of this module. In this part, we will discuss the anatomy of the spinal cord and identify some of the major branches of the spinal nerves. The spinal cord is the continuation of the brain after the foramen magnum and is still part of the central nervous system. It runs in the vertebral canal from the foramen magnum to the middle of the sacrum. The spinal cord serves as a vital link between the brain and the body, and from the body to the brain. Spinal nerves are connected with the sides of the spinal cord in pairs. Both the spinal nerves and the spinal cord are designated as cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, or caudal according to the part of the body in which the vertebrae are situated. Grossly, let us see some of the important parts of the spinal cord. Here is a dorsal view of the lumbar region after the removal of the muscles in the vertebrae to expose the spinal cord. And here is the spinal cord. The tapered terminal end is called conus medullaris because of its cone-shaped appearance. This region consists of the spinal segments S2, S3, and caudal 1 to caudal 5. The collection of nerves at the end of the spinal cord is known as the cauda equina due to its resemblance to a horse tail as shown here. As mentioned previously, the spinal cord can be divided into segments. The basis for this division is the attachment of the dorsal or the ventral roots. Let us then explore the different structures that can be seen in a segment of a spinal cord. Here is a schematic illustration showing a segment of a spinal cord. Here are the dorsal and the ventral roots mentioned a while ago. The dorsal root is carrying sensory fibers while the ventral roots carry the motor fibers. In addition, the dorsal root has a dorsal root ganglion with its new name as spinal ganglion, which contains cell bodies of afferent neurons. You will learn more about this when you reach your physiology course. The dorsal and the ventral roots will merge to form the spinal nerve. This will give you an idea that a spinal nerve is mixed in contrast to the cranial nerves with either motor or sensory or mixed function. The dorsal branch of the spinal nerve extends dorsally to innervate deep muscles and skin above the transverse process of the vertebrae. On the other hand, the ventral branch supplies the muscles and skin of the limbs and the lateral and ventral trunks. Being branches of a spinal nerve, both dorsal and ventral branches carry sensory and motor fibers. A segment of a spinal cord will also show you the typical butterfly-shaped structure. This is actually the gray matter, which contains the cell bodies of neurons and glia, thus with a darker color when stained. Surrounding directly the gray matter is the white matter, which is composed of myelinated axons and glial cells. The specific parts of the gray and the white matter are best discussed in detail in histology courses. Please take note that the spinal nerves, together with most of the cranial nerves, are part of the peripheral nervous system. Spinal nerves branch off from spinal cord to innervate the rest of the body. These complex networks of nerves enable the brain to receive sensory inputs from the skin and to send motor controls for muscle movements. In dog, there are usually 36 pairs of spinal nerves. There are 8 pairs of cervical, 13 pairs of thoracic, 7 pairs of lumbar, 3 pairs of sacral, and 5 pairs of caudal spinal nerves. Plexuses are tangled arrangements of the spinal nerves. 2 types of plexuses exist. Plexus supplying the body wall and appendages are often referred to as the somatic plexus. Plexuses found around the arteries supplying the viscera and in the walls of the visceral organs are called the visceral plexus. Let us focus our attention on the somatic plexus. There are 2 major somatic plexuses, the brachial plexus and the lumbosacral plexus. The brachial plexus is composed of the last 3 cervical nerves and the first 2 thoracic nerves and innervates the thoracic limb. On the other hand, the lumbosacral plexus is composed of the last 5 lumbar nerves and all the 3 sacral nerves. The lumbosacral plexus supplies nerves to the pelvic limb. In this schematic image, you can see that the regions of the spinal cord supplying the plexuses are visibly greater in diameter because they have more sensory and motor neurons supplying the mass of the limbs. This enlargement are called intumescence. The one at the brachial plexus is called cervical intumescence, while the one at the lumbosacral plexus is called lumbar intumescence. As mentioned, the brachial plexus is built by the last 3 cervical nerves and the last 2 thoracic nerves. There are 10 identified nerves that arise from the brachial plexus, and here is a summary of the muscles that they innervate. In the same manner, here are the branches of the lumbosacral plexus. Again, it is composed of the last 5 lumbar spinal nerves and all the 3 sacral nerves. These are the major nerves that arise from the plexus together with the muscles that they innervate. And that ends our discussion on the nervous system. Take note that we discuss only the basics of the neuroanatomy, and a detailed course is needed to have an in-depth discussion on the system. Most of the topics will also be tackled in your physiology class, so it is better that you have a very good background in anatomy of the brain and the spinal cord to appreciate the basic and the clinical application of neuroanatomy.